Welcome back to the Jasmine Star Show. Y'all, I have been waiting for this conversation since April 2020. If y'all have been around the block with us for a while, back on episode 51, we had this brilliant mind on the podcast, and Ramit Sethi came on, blew all of our dang minds when it came to pricing, and he broke down how to price your product or service. It was and still remains one of the top most downloaded podcasts the show has ever got. So to have him come back, I am just like, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back, Ramit, host of I Will Teach You to Be Rich podcast. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I've joined the podcast world since we last talked.
Yeah. So since 2020, you were non-podcasting and homeboy decides to start a podcast. It just blows up. And now you're back on this podcast. So how has podcasting been for you?
All my friends have been telling me for about 8 years that I need to start a podcast. And I was like, yeah, I know I probably should, but I didn't know what my idea was. I didn't feel like I was the best interviewer, and I didn't want to do what I saw other people doing much better than I could. And so I just waited like a long game of poker. And then one day this couple came on Instagram DM and they said, we are having trouble with our money. Will you help us? We have $525,000 of debt. I said, all right, I'll help you if you agree to do it live on Instagram Live. I didn't think they would. They're like, okay. I was like, wait, what? You actually agreed? They have to share all their numbers. I made them share everything. They did it. I helped them out. You know, one of the top two professions in financial trouble that I talk to, number one, vets. They're always in the biggest amount of debt. Number two, physical therapists. So these two were vets. And when I started helping them and they shared exactly how much debt they have, exactly how much money they make, people went bonkers and I realized this is it. And so the new podcast, I speak to couples. Some of them have $600,000 of debt. Some of them have $13 million. In that episode, she was about to divorce him because he's too cheap. And the conversations you hear are like conversations you've never heard. You are a fly on the wall. You hear people talk about the actual income they make. You see exactly what they spend their money on, their debt. People cry, they laugh. It is like being in the room watching an intimate conversation about money.
Ladies and gentlemen, if that is not the best pitch for a podcast, y'all, like he's not even teaching you about money. He is teaching you about how to be your own hype person. If you have not listened to his podcast, I mean, you guys have to check it out. But the reason I'm coming back on the podcast now is because he has now had enough tread, and I want him to start look at me. I'm a professional podcaster. Leave me alone. I want you to infuse these stories in these situations that I am going to be presenting. So think of it as like an amoosh boosh. We're going to have like a bit of a taste test before you dive fully into his podcast. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about money and relationships, but then we're going to add a little bit of our own sabor. Okay. It's going to be money and relationships when it comes to two people or one person in a relationship who are entrepreneurs. So I'm going to be giving him examples, and I kind of want to break down what this looks like, but we're going to start, if you don't mind, with a recent Instagram post. And you had said, it's all about the words that we use when we talk about money. In this post, you wrote that the way we talk about money defines the roles that it plays in our relationship, specifically in our relationship with our partners. Can you speak a little bit more like why this happens and why does the way we talk about money matter?
Most people don't talk about money unless there's a problem. We're totally reactive to money. Think about it. If I take the average person and I say, when was the last time you talked about money? They're like, oh, when she spent too much or he spent too much or we couldn't realize which account we're going to pay out of. I go, when was the last time you sat down proactively with an agenda, set on the calendar, and you talked about what you want to do with your money, how you want to dream about your money, how you want to create a rich life? And they look at me like I'm absolutely bonkers. They go, that's weird. Having an agenda with your partner, that's weird. I go, you know what's weird? Spending the next 40 years of your life arguing about who much spent too much on asparagus at the grocery store. I don't want to live that life where I have to pull out that Safeway receipt and look at it and analyze every last amount. And so first, we don't talk about it proactively. That's number one. Second, when we do talk about it, the language we use is loaded and often negative or accusatory. Why'd you spend that much? What happened here? We're never going to be able to pay this off. And I would like us to reframe that into questions like, when was the last time we sat down and discussed what we get to do with our money? Where do we want to go this year? Who do we want to bring with us? What kind of experiences do we want to create for our children? Those questions. Even how aggressively do we want to pay off our debt? That's also can be a dream. But if you are living down in the weeds and you are consumed with these $3 questions, you never really get to ask yourself the $30,000 questions. And that is what money can really be about.
I love this. And so somebody's listening, be like, well, great. How often do you recommend sitting down with your partner and having these conversations? Like the time on your calendar conversation?
Once a month, minimum. Either once every 2 weeks or once a month. Should be about a 1 hour meeting. And if you have your system set up right, you really should not spend much more than 1 hour per month talking about money. So let me break that down. When you sit down for what I call a rich life review, that's once a month.
Ooh, yes.
Notice this, it's not a budget meeting.
Is that trademark? Like Rich Life Review TM.
It's not, exactly. It's not a budget meeting because everybody hates budgets.
Right.
It's unbelievable. So many people, they go, oh yeah, we really need to keep a budget. I go, really? When was the last time you tried to keep a budget? They go, 1996. I go, how long did that last? 15 days. I go, why? Why do you insist on trying something that never works? Let's do something a different way. And if you're not sure what to do it, just do it my way. Because trust me, my way is going to work better than the way that has not worked for you. So a Rich Life Review once a month, you both sit down. It's structured. You both start off complimenting each other about something. I really appreciate the way you planned our trip. I always know every time you plan our travel, you always make it so we reach there on time and it's always comfortable. We're never stressed out. I just want to say I really recognize that and I appreciate it. That right there, totally different tone talking about money because you're both feeling good. Okay, that's number one. Two is you have a rapid review of your key numbers. Now, this is important. Most of us don't really know what our key numbers are. That's why people have the same level of urgency with $25,000 of credit card debt as they do with their partner who spent $56 at Target. They're not the same. Mm-hmm. In fact, if you are arguing about something that's $20, you've taken a wrong turn somewhere. We need to be talking about those big, the $30,000 questions. So you have a key review. There are pretty much 4 numbers you need to know. Fixed cost, savings rate, investment rate, and guilt-free spending number. These are all part of my conscious spending plan. And then finally, you get the joy and privilege of being able to say, okay, how are we doing towards our goals? What do we want to do this year? Do we have a birthday party coming up? Do we want to take that dinner out with our friends next month? What do we get to do? You do those 3 things and your money is going to transform because you're focused on the big picture, not the tiny details.
This is so good. This is therapy with your wallet. I mean, this is a distinct ROI on your therapy with Ramit. Okay, so what we're going to do is, if it's okay with you, and I always just like kind of like playing in these zones. Oh, actually, I wanted to ask a personal question. I'm about to spill the tea. How often do you and your partner have a conversation around this? Like, when do you have these meetings?
We do it once a month. We recently increased it to once every 2 weeks because we have some things that we need to iron out that have come up. I will admit, sometimes we go a little bit longer than we should between meetings. And we've realized, life gets in the way. That happens. And so what did we do? We recently talked about, okay, I'm in charge of setting the date, putting it on the calendar. So we assign one person in charge of it. It's just like at work. And you know what? And that's okay. People have this very odd notion that a relationship is purely romantic. I go, yeah, it's romantic, but it's also a business partnership. It's logistics. Anyone who's bought a house together or had children together or planned a trip together knows that. Yes. And so let's just take the romantic part. That's part of it, but we also got to get on the same page. So we have one person who owns certain things. The other person owns certain things. And at a certain point, you can also alternate, which you should, because you should not only have one person being in charge of money. Never. It should be both partners. So that is how we do it.
I love that. Thank you so much for speaking into that and speaking into it so candidly. And even if you're like, no, I refuse to not infuse romance into these financial conversations. Well, let me just tell you, there is nothing sweeter. Like, let me stick my tongue down my husband's mouth when he's like, look at our vacation fund. I was like, yes. So let's just be real about that. So in this conversation, but thank you for being so candid. That was really awesome. So there's a myriad of listeners, and we're going to break them into 4 different categories so that we can self-identify in our partnerships and also speak to the person who's not in a partnership but wants to best prepare for these types of conversations when and if that time comes in the future. So I want to talk about a new entrepreneur. They're considering starting their own business or growing kind of like their side hustle. And so they know it's going to come at a bit of a financial cost. What is the best way for them to approach this conversation with their partner? And how do they bring it up? What do they focus on? Last time in our conversation, you were really great with giving us things to say that really empowered the listener. So what might this new entrepreneur say? How do we navigate that conversation?
I'll give you the psychology first, and then I'll tell you exactly what to say.
Yes.
The psychology of the person considering being an entrepreneur is it's likely that they are concerned. How do I know this is going to work? What if I have to take a dramatic pay cut, etc.? Here's what you need to know. It's your responsibility to figure these things out. You can talk about them with your partner. You can ask him for help, but it's your responsibility as the person who's considering starting something to be the leader in bringing these conversations up. That's it. Hear me loud and clear. It is your responsibility. So you have options. You might be staying at your full-time job and doing this on the side. I like that approach. I think it's really healthy. Or you might be leaving to go full bore onto this business. I don't love that idea, but okay, if some people do that, they lose all their income and start a business, fine. The way that I would approach it and what I would say is I would go to my partner and I would say, I've been thinking about this for a long time. I know we've been talking about it, and I think it's the right time. I'm ready to start my business. I have an idea. I've proved it with 5 customers, but I do want to talk to you about what this would mean for us because it's got to be something that we both support and go into eyes wide open. Would you be open to talking about that? Partner's going to say yes. You say, great. I see 3 major issues. The first one is just going to be time. If I do this, it probably means that I'm going to have to spend Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for 3 hours after work focusing on my business, plus half a Saturday. That would mean that we can't go out on Friday nights like we used to. And I would want to just be totally upfront with you. I want to make sure that we talk about this now instead of later. So you talk about that. The second issue would be risk. It's possible that this just doesn't work, or it's possible that me working on this might compromise from my job. Here's my plan for that not to happen. What do you think? Am I missing anything? And third is money. If I'm leaving my full-time job, that's going to mean that we're losing $4,000 a month. Here's my plan. I have savings, or I am planning to do this for 6 months. If I'm not hitting $3,850 within 6 months, I'm going to go back and get another job. How do you feel about that? Notice that in all of this entire thing I just told you, you are the one coming with a plan, identifying the risks. You should be doing all this work before you ever sit down to have a conversation with your partner. And then you're totally receptive to what your partner needs. Your job is not to convince your partner. That is not your job. Your job is to identify all the risks, to ask them to identify any you may have missed, and then for both of you to make a decision, ideally together.
Ooh, and like the church is like, hey, man. I mean, this is just so powerful with these actionable steps and tips. And to infuse a little bit of like a real life situation, what I hear is like, hey, think about the worst case scenario and then ask and invite your partner to have an opinion or weigh in. Just this past weekend, I've been given an opportunity to hang out with a group of entrepreneurs, and I really wanted my daughter and my husband there. However, things get complicated because we are co-founders, and I'm like, let's have a conversation around what it looks like to take our daughter. We're not talking about finances, but when we go back into, we're having a business relationship as you start a family, these are the conversations, and very similar in this situation, because just like a new business owner, this is like the first time that I am stepping into a time where I am not going to be present as much. And I need to lay out all the risks all the time, and then the additional investment that it would take for me to be there. So these 3 key factors, not just play in finances, but as you start building your family and as you start growing your business. So thank you. That was amazing. Now, let's talk about a person who has started a business, but they haven't been making a lot of profit quite yet. A little bit of traction. Let's say this person has a partner who doesn't quite understand what they're doing and is starting to get frustrated with the lack of money that's coming or not coming in. What are some scripts or ideas this person can use to have a healthy conversation?
I find that the psychology of people in this situation, specifically entrepreneurs, is very inwardly focused versus focused on their partner and their
Yes.
family.
Yes.
So they're obviously frustrated as an entrepreneur who's starting out and is not making what they thought they would. And so they often will say things like, I just need a couple more clients. It just takes a few more months. It just will take longer. And the partner's like, listen, you've been saying that for the last 12 months. Why is anything going to change? And so the entrepreneur will get frustrated because they're not being supported by their partner emotionally or otherwise. And this is a recipe for disaster. I've spoken to couples like this on my podcast. One of them I discovered was doing a business that had very little chance of succeeding. She'd been doing it for like years. She was making basically nothing. It was very clear from the outside that this business was going nowhere. It should just close down. Remember, sometimes the best thing you can do in life is to stop doing something, because life is too short to be failing at something for years and years if it's important to you. On the other hand, sometimes you're right around the corner for some success. And if you give up too early, it's a tragedy. So the script of what I would say is to get honest with yourself, first of all. Is this working or not? If you're not honest about something not working, then all the rest of the stuff you're going to say is just BS. Let's say that you used to make $5,000 a month at your 9-to-5 job. Okay. Let's say you've started this business and you're currently making $700 a month and you've been doing it for a year. That's not working. That is not working. We have to be honest. Now, if you were making $4,700 a month, sure, you're close, within striking distance of what you used to make. But if you are taking home a tenth of what you used to make after a year, that's not working. So you need to decide what is working and what is not for your family. And that is based on your fixed costs and what you both agreed on way early on. If you didn't agree on it, now's the time. Second, you can go to your partner and say, look, I realize that I haven't checked in enough about the state of my business. And I realized if I were in your shoes, I would feel a little lost because you don't know how my business is going. You don't know what's working, what's not. And it's my job to tell you that. So if you're open to it, I'd love to share that. And I'd love to get your thoughts. Partner goes, yeah, thank God. Okay, yes. You go, all right, when I started off, here's the goal I set out for myself. Okay. Unfortunately, I have not reached that goal. And I spent the last couple of days really analyzing what's working and what's not. And here's what I realized. Right now, I have 3 clients. In order for me to hit my goals, I need to have 30 clients. So this is what I've decided. I'm going to give myself 4 more months. If I can get to 25 clients, I will keep going. And what that means for us is soon I would be able to contribute X thousand dollars a month. We would be able to travel and XYZ, et cetera. But if I can't achieve that within 4 months, then I'm prepared to shut this down and focus on the next thing. And that could be getting a job or starting another idea. The point is, you need to give some certainty as an entrepreneur to your partner, because entrepreneurs are by definition going through uncertainty, but it's triply uncertain for your partner. And it is your job as the entrepreneur to over communicate with your partner.
That's so good. And these scripts are very helpful. Now, there is the story of the entrepreneur who has done well, like they made progress and the money is starting to come in, and perhaps they're getting a request from family, friends, peers, maybe somebody who just needs money, needs a loan. And so is it ever appropriate for a partner to say no? If so, like what's the best way to navigate once we have income? How do we get to decide where it goes?
Okay, let's say that I am asked for a loan from somebody. All right. If they want to ask me from my business, okay, I'll make a business decision. But I think most people would probably come to the couple, right, especially if it's a relative. Right. So in that case, it's definitely the decision of both parties. And any one person can veto it. So that's why setting up your financial systems is so important. In a relationship, I think one really healthy way to do it is to have a joint account, and then each person has their own individual account. If you have a joint account, and let's say, somebody comes and asks for $5,000, the two of you can look in your joint account and say, is that something that we even have the money for? And even if we do, is that something that is a priority for us and we're able to do? If you don't, then it's moot. You just say, you know what? I wish we could help you. I hope that we can help in other ways, but financially speaking, we're not able to do that. So it should be a decision if it's asked of the couple between both of them.
Now, in that situation, you had listed the joint account and then individual accounts. So the couple decides, no, the $5,000 is not from the joint account. But if one of the partners has that $5,000, it like what? How do you navigate that?
They can do it. It's no questions asked because that's in their individual account. Listen, in your individual account, if you want to buy the craziest car, the most insane sweater, you want to upgrade the hotel to a crazy thing, or you just want to be able to go out for a massage 2 times a week, that is your money. It's guilt-free, no questions asked. So if you want to give a loan to somebody or even just gift it to them and you can do it individually, you feel free.
Ooh, yes. Okay. Last scenario is I'm thinking of a entrepreneur who doesn't have a partner and they are responsible for their income and their livelihood. Now, this person one day in the future wants to have a partner, but wants to make sure that this future partner understands money and is on board with the financial ups and downs of entrepreneurship. Do you have tips and strategies on how to navigate these conversations when this person's dating?
They should both join my money coaching program. Yeah, and you should be if you want to get in this, if you want to be in a relationship with me, you need to join this coaching program with me. We're going to do this together. All right.
That's amazing.
So I say that I love a person who has high expectations for their partner. I just love it. If you're an entrepreneur, you've been providing for yourself and you have high expectations for your partner, I love that. Make sure you communicate it. Make sure you tell them why. Here's why it's important to me. You know, I realized that as I became an entrepreneur, I had to pay a lot of attention to learning about money. And so it's not that I am always dating and looking out for the person who has the most money, but I realized that money is an important part of my rich life. It allows me to live in a place that's safe or even luxurious. It allows me to travel, it allows me to treat my family, to donate. So that's an important value for me. And if we are going to go forward in a relationship, I want us to be able to talk about it. That is how I would say it to my partner. And I would, make sure that we set up our money, had a lot of conversations about how we grew up with money. What do we envision for our money? All of those things. You want to start this from, relatively early in the dating process. And over time, they can come to understand the specifics of you being an entrepreneur. You don't need to do it all at once. You have the rest of your life to go through all the little nuances, but just to make sure you have the same general values is really important.
I love this. And for anybody who's listening and you're already in a partnership, my husband and I, we got married, but we were high school sweethearts. So we didn't have like the adult-like conversations on how we navigated money. And it wasn't until a few years into our marriage when he was asking these really simple questions that I was like, well, obviously we all hide cash in a pillowcase under the closet, under, a stack of folders, obviously. And he's like, where is this coming from? So having those conversations of the stories that we tell ourselves and how we grew up around money is a conversation that can happen at any given point in time. And it kind of leads me to the next thing, because after your first year of the podcast, you wrote on Instagram kind of like a reflective. And this is a quote: "Personal finance can seem complicated, but most issues are linked back to 2 core influences: how people think and feel about money. We tend to overvalue math and undervalue psychology in personal finance." End quote. So can you break this down a little bit more? Like, how do you see the psychology play out in personal finance? And then how do you see this play out in the relationship between partners? We did have that conversation a little bit about like the history of it, but what is that connection to the thinking and then the feeling and then the psychology?
One of the most common things that people truly believe is that when they have a certain amount of money, that they will feel good about money. If I just have $10,000 in my bank account, I'll finally feel safe. If I just have $25,000, I'll finally stop worrying about money. If I have $1 million, that'll be enough. People really believe this. In the same way that when we're growing up, sometimes we throw tantrums and we don't really know why we're throwing a tantrum, but our parents know, like, oh, you didn't eat. Yeah. That's why. You didn't sleep. That's why.
Yeah.
As adults, we actually do something very similar. We don't understand ourselves, but we believe we do. And so we tell ourselves, if I just have $10,000 more, it's all going to be good. I talk to people who have over $10 million sometimes on my podcast. They're still worried about money. I had one person, multimillionaire. He drove all over town to save money on blueberries. Another one drove all over town to save 12 cents a gallon on gas. Another one, she stood in line in New York to get the cheap tickets, those discount ones.
Yes.
Instead of just getting the Lion King tickets that she wanted. She's a multimillionaire as well. Okay. So here's my message to everyone listening. The way you feel about money is highly uncorrelated to how much you've got in the bank.
Amen.
I want to say it again. The way you feel about money is highly uncorrelated to how much you've got in the bank. I just spoke to a couple. They were just in agony over how much debt they have, around $25,000 of credit card debt. Interestingly, I've spoken to another couple who had $400,000 of debt, and they felt just fine because they had a plan. They had a plan. So the way you feel is not as influenced by the math, which is what we all think money is about. Here I am, I come on the show, people say, oh, Mr. I Will Teach You to Be Rich is here. And they go, oh God, he's going to tell us about cutting back on lattes in some 10 decimal places. I go, no. Yes, you need to understand the basics language of money. Yes. But most people undervalue their feelings about money. Some of those feelings come from childhood. Your parents told you, we can't afford that. That's for rich people. We don't talk about money in this family. Mm-hmm. So you grow up 40 years later, you have money in the bank or you're an entrepreneur and you still worry about money and you cannot figure out why. And so you tell yourself, ooh, if I just have $10,000 more, you got to go back. You got to look at what happened growing up. How do you feel about money? When you say you want $10,000, what does that actually mean to you? And that is when you can actually start to make changes with your money.
Okay. So if you feel like I have stank face, well, number one, it's just my resting face. This is the way I was born. But there is an internal dialogue that there's warring sides of me because I told myself, you're not going to talk to Ramit about your personal business. See, you come organized and you have these 4 things. And I was like, I'm not going to, and I can't help but feel there's got to be a reason. And I have done, like Ramit, I've done work about my childhood money stories. And as a testament, I'm just going to be real. This is the podcast. I'm going to come up 100% unvarnished. I have talked openly about growing up poor. I have talked about the money issues. I have done deep work around it. Now, here's the crazy thing. When it comes to our business, my husband and I meet with our CFO at minimum once a month. I know numbers down to decimal points. I know profitability. I know trends. I am in the numbers. And when it comes to our personal finances, because he and I were structured as a business, we both get paychecks. And when it comes to our personal finances, Ramit, I will put on blinders. I am just like, I don't want to look at our finances. Just tell me things. Tell me how it's going. I want to abdicate 100% of that responsibility. What do I do? Like, what is my script to myself, first and foremost? Because my husband's just like, do you know, Ramit? I will act a fool. I know, I'm so embarrassed. I'm saying this because I'm going to change. I'm saying it because when you say something out publicly, it forces you to change. I have refused to memorize our bank login information because I don't even want to see the accounts. That's weird.
It's not that weird. I know you're an avoider. It's totally normal. So I'm going to share a couple of examples just to show you that it's not weird. And there are a lot of people in your situation and you can absolutely change it if you want to. All right.
I will.
I spoke to a young couple and she was at home. I think they had one child and another on the way. And she would send frantic texts to her husband in the middle of the workday saying, I hate this place, this apartment. We got to get a bigger place. We got to move. And, he's at work and he didn't know how to respond to these. So he would avoid it. And I asked him, why? And they have this new baby coming. And it turns out that she avoids dealing with money. So she doesn't actually know how much they make. This is surprising. A lot of couples, one person doesn't even know how much they make. And I asked her, are we talking like 100K or $1 million? She goes, I have no idea. I go, okay, good to know. I ask every couple before they come on my show to prepare a conscious spending plan. I specifically tell them do it together because that's where the dynamic really emerges. I say, pull out that CSP. She goes, what are you talking about? I go, the one you're supposed to do together. She goes, I have no idea. So I said, okay, well, there's a link, open it up. She spends 15 minutes on the episode, kind of fiddling around, unable to open the doc. She doesn't realize she's doing this, but unconsciously she's trying to avoid engaging with the numbers. Okay. And she at one point says, I even asked my husband to just tell me, what is the basic, how much do we have? How much do we owe? He gave her a document, printed it out. She wouldn't look at it. Mm. And so finally we got to the root of it. That's what I spent a lot of time with these couples. And she admitted, she said, I hate looking at numbers. I don't want to deal with it. I want him to do it. And the day of this podcast, she goes, I tried to sabotage it. I was really mean. I didn't even want to come on. And I said, why? Here she is talking in front of millions of people now. I often ask people this one question, which I'm going to ask right now to you. What do you get out of it? What do you get out of not engaging with your personal finances?
I feel, and it's a feeling not rooted in reality, is I feel like we have freedom to do anything, that anything is possible. And in the past, money has always, as a child, money was a restriction. We could not do because we did not have. And so as two successful adults, I look at money as like, if we have that, then that must be a barrier. And I don't want to dwell. I want to dwell in impossibility.
So two things I heard from that. First, that you believe that feelings are not real. Did you catch that?
Yes, I did.
It's not true. Your feelings are very real. They might lead you astray, especially if you don't pair them with actual numbers sometimes, but they're real. So I never try to get people to stop feeling that way. Instead, I try to ask them, where did that come from? Which is the second point. The way you see money, informed by your childhood, is that it's a source of restriction. So if you avoid it, what does that mean?
Anything is possible. I can do whatever I want, Ramit.
Exactly. And the irony is, you could probably do everything you want if you looked at the numbers. In fact, you might even be able to do more. But you created this idea in your mind. It came probably from your childhood that anytime I look at money, it's a source of restriction. It's bad. So I don't even want to deal with that. But ironically, you and your husband have done so well, so impressive, that to me, it's actually a source of pride and possibility. But in order to truly explore that, how big your rich life can be, you actually have to engage with the numbers.
I receive that. And a bit back, I want to make sure that I am digesting what I'm hearing and being open so that listeners can be open with themselves. And then as they dive deeper with you, they can be open with you and their partners. One of the things that you had said was the dichotomy between the couples. There was one couple who was $25,000 in debt and feeling very overwhelmed, and another couple who was $400,000 in debt, but they felt okay because they had a plan. And what I immediately thought of was the safety that my partner provides, because he always has a plan. And when I look at numbers, I look at restrictions, and he looks at numbers and has a plan for possibility. And so I really just did want to validate that the reason why I am afforded the luxury of abdication, but no longer, was because he's got a plan, a master plan, and I want that to change. I want us to build the plan together. I don't want to hide from it. And I don't want the numbers to look as restrictions, but as conduit for possibility. And I feel very open and vulnerable right now.
It's cool that we can do this together. I mean, the fact that you are so open about it is amazing. And as you can tell, like, I'm not here to judge anybody. My goal is to show people, regardless of what number you have, regardless of how you feel about money, that you should live a rich life. And that in your case, it's a tragedy to live a smaller life than you have to. I remember when my wife and I started talking about money, and when we got together, I had been running my business for a long time. All right. And because of my business and good decisions and also a lot of luck, I had accumulated, a net worth. And it would have been very easy for me to be the money guy in our relationship. It would have been really easy. In fact, tell you the truth, it would be easy right now if I just did the finances in our relationship. But from day one, I told her, I don't want that. And there are a few reasons. One day I'm going to die. That's just life. Yeah. And if I leave you defenseless, not knowing how this works, you're going to be prey for the financial industry. Okay. And that happens a lot now. I speak to a lot of couples and primarily women who were not given the same level of access and also did not take the same level of access in their finances. Their partner passes away and they are defenseless. They don't understand how 1% to a financial advisor means 28% of their returns are going out their pocket in fees. Nobody knows that. Okay, second, I told my wife, I want us to do this together because we need to create this life together, right? We need both of us to participate. And 3, it's just a lot more fun. It's just more fun to have a partner doing it side by side.
It is.
So yeah, it would be easier. In any relationship, there's usually one person who empties the dishwasher or one person who takes out the trash. I get that. That's normal. But money's not like that. It's much more like parenting, where it is so fundamental that both partners have to be involved. That is why I insist both partners get involved.
Ramit, thank you. Very personal for me. Like, whoa, hit me outside of left field. Thank you for doing this for me. I think that selfishly, you have given me the greatest gift, and I look forward to sharing with other people, but also being able to do it on the podcast. And then you sharing openly for people who do want to go deeper with your coaching philosophies and your podcast. Like, please, where do we go?
The first thing I would do is invite people to just go to the I Will Teach You to Be Rich podcast. Find the episode that speaks to you, whether it's somebody in debt, whether it's the person who wanted their partner to pick up the dinner check, whether it's the couple with $10 million of net worth. There's dozens and dozens of different couples, different socioeconomic status, different sexuality, geography, everything. We really go all over the world to find these couples. Listen to a couple of episodes. And then if you want help actually improving your money, go to our money coaching program. It's in all of our show notes. It's iwt.com/money coaching. And that's where I do this live every month, where I help my money coaching students really get the nuts and bolts of personal finance under their control.
Ramit, thank you. And you're a great Instagram follow at Ramit, like shout out there. So there you go.
Thank you very much.
Like always, I can't wait, and hopefully less time next time to have you back, because you are a game changer, you're a life changer, and you're a money changer. So thank you, Ramit, for being on the Jasmine Star Show. Y'all, tag Ramit in what you have learned. Like, please spread the goodness that he has so generously shared here. Much love, much blessings, gratitude. Thank you, Ramit.
Thank you so much.